Welcome back to Contend 101, where we tackle the tough topics to make it easier for you to contend for your relationships. And look, you guys, I don't want to say that this is the toughest topic. They're all good ones, but let me just say we brought our pastor in today to discuss it. Kevin Jack, welcome to our mini little side project here at Church for the One. How you doing?
I'm good.
Are you ready for today?
I am so ready for today. You do one series on politics, and now it's your thing that you talk about forever.
And now everyone's like, politics, get Kevin in.
Yep.
And that's exactly what we did. Before we start, I'm going to start the timer because we believe it doesn't take a lot of time to be able to tackle the tough topics.
Let's go.
Which is a tongue twister. Say it 3 times fast. And
a lot of time tackle tough topics.
That is exactly right. Today we are talking about how to have a conversation with somebody that voted differently to you. It's very good timing. Not only post Purple Series last year, if you didn't see it, there's the plug. But we're about to have Inauguration Day, and there can tend to be in America some maybe tension behind that. Some underlying stuff, shall we call it. How do we do it? Can you help us? I don't even have anything else to say. Help us, Kevin.
So let's at least acknowledge it first. Like, we've got 3 options. Okay. The option one is ignore the conversation about politics and avoid it at all costs. Option number 2 is fight about it like crazy, which some people choose. Most people are too scared to have the conversation in person, so they'd rather just fight about it online.
Yep, in the comment section.
Yeah, say I don't have the bravery to bring it up to another person. But then the third option is to actually have a civil conversation with someone, and I feel like that's our only option because of the topic that we have today.
That's exactly right.
You can say how do you talk about someone about politics? Ignore it. Go do something else. Don't talk about it at all.
At all costs. Be silent and walk away.
Let me show you how to run away. Let me show you how to fake an emergency.
You just immediately leave the table. I'm like, I don't know where Kevin went, but thanks for watching. Like, I don't know.
That's great.
That's not the denial thing. You do see it a lot. I have been that person as well, to be like, I am so terrified to open my mouth. Because to have a civil conversation, we probably need to acknowledge that 2 parties need to come to the table ready for a civil conversation about it.
Exactly. And you're not going to, so I think that is a piece of, say, how do you talk to someone about politics? First off, if they just want to fight about it, it's probably going to be really hard.
It's never going to be a conversation.
And avoidance might actually be an okay strategy. And say, if certain topics get brought up with your family every time you're together on the holidays, avoidance is, it's okay to say, hey, in this season, we're not going to talk about this.
That's great.
But then if I could give, hopefully, people some frameworks on how to think about it and why it's so divisive.
I think people would be very grateful for that.
And so to understand, you have to understand somewhat of the political process of and I don't say this negatively, you could call it marketing, you could call it propaganda, pick your word, they're the same thing. But then mechanisms of the marketing, the mechanisms of political propaganda always exist on 3 spectrums. And to say when it comes to, so we don't just disagree about the politician, we disagree about the policy. That's important for people to understand.
That's actually great. We
disagree about the policy. Now, what the mechanisms of propaganda do is they always root policy in 3 different things. And the policy becomes rooted in, first, vision. This is what we want our country to be.
Yes.
And so this is where it comes. So it's vision. The second piece is virtue. Is it always appeals to an individual's virtue. So if we took immigration, a strong border is rooted in the virtue. I'm not saying rooted in terms of the policy itself. I'm talking about the propaganda piece of it. It is rooted in the virtue of a protector instinct. Where more of an open border on that side is rooted in the virtue of generosity and hospitality.
That's right.
And so we have vision, we have virtue. But then the third piece that is always essential in the political process is an enemy. And these people are trying to do this. And so if we just take this case of the border, what has happened to it has appealed to an individual, their virtue, let's say closed border, of a protector. And these other people don't care about you, and that's how they're the enemy. Versus open border, rooted in the virtue, we are generous, we are hospitable. This is what America was always meant to be. And these other people are selfish, and they only care about themselves. And so I think it's really important when you're having a conversation to be able to look at what is underneath that framework. So here's a great way to enter into it. Thomas Sowell, great philosopher, thinker, political strategist. He had this statement, and it's so profound. He says, there are no solutions, only trade-offs.
It's great. Yep.
Anything time you have it as solution, you're only trading one thing for another. And so the way in which you enter into a political conversation with someone who disagrees with you is you have to start on the vision or virtue side and be aware of the enemy that has already been named.
Yeah.
So something pops up.
So good.
And we go, hey, someone say, well, I think all these people, we should just have a closed border. You go, oh. And so you start to tap into that virtue piece, especially. It would say like, oh, that's awesome that you think that way. I'm sure you believe in the importance of generosity in relationships.
Right.
Get underneath it so you can have a conversation about vision and virtue, not just a conversation about policy.
Can I ask then, how do you stay in the virtue when somebody is baiting you? Because that often happens in these conversations, is that you can start in the virtue, because I love what you're saying there. And then how do we make sure we're not then coming back up? Or is it a constant
it's so
just
hard.
bringing it back down, coming back up? Is it give yourself some grace if it comes back, but just keep trying to bring it back down to virtue?
And so I think this is where it gets really difficult on the technique of it, is to say like some people, they have been so fueled by the marketing mechanisms of politics that they actually didn't attach to vision or virtue. They only attached to the part that was the enemy. And the reality is you can't have a civil conversation with a person who only knows what they're against. Like it's not possible on that piece. And so as long as you can keep that conversation on the vision or virtue side, you can talk about that and you can talk about a whole lot of things and have a reasonable conversation.
And I think the goal of any conversation being not having to be to make them come over to your political side.
Correct.
Having a conversation, I think we talked about this in the Purple series we did last year with church, is that having a conversation like that is not trying to bring someone over to your argument. It is simply to share your values, your virtues, in a way that communicates it to the other side. And I think that seeing it like that was so helpful for me, because I'm no longer trying to convince somebody of something. I'm simply trying to share something. Whether it comes to politics or faith, I think that's a pretty good principle for people.
So I've got a couple friends that I talk really openly politically that disagree monumentally from me. But the fascinating thing is in that piece, as I've discovered their beliefs on policies, I've been able to unearth stories in their history, some incredibly powerful, others more trauma pieces and things they were hurt by that have really shaped what their beliefs are today. And so it's just amazing to realize that like there are reasons why people think what they think. And I think the difficult piece on here, and I just want to say, this is not the curious, like you want to have a curious conversation with someone, not trying to convince them of your side. If you're trying to convince them, it's not a conversation. It's now turned into an argument. As long as I stay in the curious mode, I learn so much about people.
That's great.
But then the fundamental.
Then the fundamental. We had the fundamental. Finish the thought, Kevin.
Well, I think the fundamental way we disagree is it's not just the vision, virtue, or enemies. It's the ability to enact the policies. They believe, and anyone who's in leadership understands ideas are worth nothing. Execution is everything. And so that becomes the complicated piece. But if you operate with someone curious about who they are and why they believe what they believe, as long as they have not already named you as their enemy, I believe civil and honestly great conversations are really possible.
That is so profound, so helpful, I know, for so many people. The Australian here is very grateful to be able to talk American politics with you, Kevin Jack. Thank you so much for helping us today. See you next time on Contend 101.